Hello and welcome to the 1904 Club, the Hull City podcast, of course, from the Hull Daily Mail. And well, today is almost like an international break. We've got Catherine in court doing Sam Kerr's trial on day 6 of what was a 3-day trial. Fletcher's trying to fix his car. We think Prutts is going to join at some point when he's been doing his hair. But we've got Burnsy with us. Burnsy, how the devil are you?
Well, hello to everybody. I'm off the substitutes bench, and it's nice to be back for a one-off appearance. Tar for the call, Baz, and I'm glad to help out, given the other three's misfortune. Yeah, Catherine's telling you she's covering a court case. She's in court because she's been putting the wrong stuff in a recyclable wheelie bin, hasn't she? Persistent offender, something like that. That's what it is, and it's no surprise Fletcher's got problems with his car, is it?
Oh, it's a carry on, isn't it?
Really.
It is an
And
absolute.
Prutz is joining us, though, isn't he? I'm looking forward to seeing him.
Yeah, he is. But you know what he's like. He's a bit of a media, you know what, and he has, after he leaves us, he'll be on Sky Sports News. Then he'll be on a podcast, and he's got to make sure his hair looks the part. I mean, as somebody that clearly
I'm the
spends an awful
same.
amount of time doing my hair, I can only empathise with him. So
Yeah.
no action for Hull City over the weekend, but no shortage of news. Let's deal with the news in brief. Derby County have sacked their manager before a 1-1 draw at Norwich. Paul Warne apparently hauled off the coach to Carrow Road on Friday to be told that he's no longer required at Derby. It looks like they're going to be appointing John Eustace, the Blackburn manager. So that is an interesting dynamic, Burnsy, isn't it? In the relegation fight, Derby now a point closer to City, just a point away, but obviously City do now have that game in hand.
I was reading Twitter, and there were
Oh
Blackburn
God.
fans saying, "No way, you're getting Eustace, Derby. Don't be silly. You're not getting Eustace." But is there a £500,000 release clause in his contract, so other clubs can talk to him? And that's presumably Derby are aware of that and decided to give it a go. Derby a better prospect than Blackburn
Um, I
for a
mean,
manager?
I guess you have to look at it and say, in terms of league table, what are they? 16 places below Blackburn. So in
I've had a
terms of that, no.
sixth.
What I would say is that I was having these conversations a couple of months ago about Eustace when he was talked about for the City job. He's based in the Midlands. His family live in the Midlands. He's living in a hotel in Blackburn. I think he goes back to his family on a Sunday. He's obviously a former Derby player. I think he's always held the idea of managing that football club at some point. As much as it pains me to say it, Derby are a big club, aren't they? They get, they pull in 30,000 people pretty much most weeks. All the time they're giving away free tickets. But if he can get that turned around, it's a good job, isn't it? And maybe there's a disconnect between Eustace and the Blackburn owners, the Venkirs. That's something that's been talked about for a long time. He's obviously done a great job there, turning them from relegation candidates last year into a team in and around the top 6 this year. I think you'd have to say punching above their weight with budget and players available. But yeah, so it's interesting to see how that changes the dynamic. Obviously, Derby, as it stands, come here the final home game of Hull City's season. That could change now. The home game against Plymouth on March the 1st will not be happening because obviously Plymouth beat Liverpool, so they have an FA Cup tie that weekend. It now means that City will have pretty much another weekend, a midweek fixture crammed in. And looking at the schedule, I don't see how it gets scheduled in between now and the end of March with games as they are, and obviously the international break. So you'd kind of imagine a bit like the Ipswich game last year. It maybe gets funneled in. Well, that was a Saturday, wasn't it? What am I talking about? It probably gets funneled in somewhere after Easter in a midweek. But yeah, I think we were saying before, weren't we? Every team from 17th or 16th down have changed their manager this season, apart from Portsmouth, who were beaten at Sheffield United on Saturday, but played very well and had a lot of chances. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it changes the dynamic, Burnsy. Another piece of news is that Abdush Omer has gone back to Turkey. Rizespor, he's joined on loan. No option to buy as we understand it. But Burnsy, Abdouche gone. I think 37 appearances since he joined City last year. No goals, just 3 assists. It's fair to say that move, met with a lot of excitement, including ourselves a year ago, hasn't really worked out.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's definitely a shame because when he got on the ball, he got exciting, but there was a level of excitement because he was always busy, but there was never quite enough end product. And it's probably best for him and best for City if he can go there and rediscover his form and then reassess the situation at the end of the season because with the way it was going, he was not going to get in the City starting lineup. He might not have made the bench given they've strengthened. So better for all parties, I think, that that move is made. Just going back, and we'll talk more specifically on City. Just going, I'm interested in Plymouth doing wondrous things against Liverpool in the cup yesterday. How do you think that affects the league from their point of view? Is it, it's the classic, is it a distraction or is it going to boost the confidence? We've knocked Liverpool out the FA Cup. We're flying. We'll stay up. And how do you feel it affects the dynamic, Baz?
I'm not sure it does. It's an FA. No doubt it'll lift them. It'll give them a boost. It was a wonderful FA Cup moment, wasn't it, yesterday? But I don't know. They're 4 points behind City with a goal difference. I think City's is -9. Theirs is -34. We'll have to wait and see. They play Millwall midweek, which is their bread and butter. Millwall are in absolutely fantastic form, aren't they? It's funny how, and this is the thing that really grates on me about City, really. Millwall, we went there a couple of weeks ago. Alex Neil was getting pelters from the home fans. They'd only just taken over. We won 1-0. They've now gone, 1-4 on the spin. Won at Leeds on Saturday, albeit in the FA Cup. But anybody to go to Leeds and win this season is doing well. And suddenly Millwall are, flying up the table and looking at, that it's mad. They're 14th, but they're only 5 points off the top 6 with a game in hand on Blackburn. So that's how quickly it can change when you can put together a run of results. We've seen so many teams, Sheffield Wednesday do it. We've seen Queen's Park Rangers do it. We saw Oxford do it for a spell after Gary Rowett was appointed. We even saw Portsmouth do it a few weeks ago when they looked to be marooned in the bottom 3, and suddenly they win a couple of games and get a couple of draws, and they're competitive again. City, that Achilles heel, as we've said all season, because they've only been able to do it once, and that was way back at the end of September, beginning of October under Tim Walter when they won 3 in a row. And we keep talking about it. It's getting annoying. I'm sure everybody's bored senseless of us talking about it, but it is a thing. The fact that whenever they get a good result, they're incapable of backing up with another good result. And that is why they threaten to pull away from the bottom 3. And then invariably they play at home and get dragged back into the bottom 3 or around it. And we better be quiet now because Prutts is here. We better stop talking about him.
If I'd have known Burnsy was on, I would have got my backside in gear and kind of got my stuff sorted that I needed to get sorted. Burnsy, my love, how are you?
Nice to see you, Prutts. Nice
to see you. We
started without you. I hope
it was
you don't
understandable.
mind.
No, fine. I'll just repeat everything that you said because me and you were always on the same page, aren't we?
That's true. Are you on a Guinness there, or is that a coffee? I saw the top of the drink.
Coffee. I mean, the little baby Guinness at this time would set the week right off, wouldn't it? Let's be brutally honest. Anyway, gang, how are we? Baz, sorry, mate. Hello.
Hi there. For those that aren't watching on the YouTube, we thought Prutts was having his hair done, but clearly he hasn't. He's either just come in from a run or out the shower.
Bit of everything, really. I just had things, a couple of bits to do this morning, Baz. Sorry, mate.
How are you, darling? You all right? How was your weekend?
I'm good. I was the weekend. It was good. I was in the fine city of Hull last Monday. I was doing a bit of visiting over on the east side and had a little trip down memory lane. My great auntie used to live on Bransholme, so I had a little ride around there. Came back across the city through all the roadworks, which was great fun. But no, it's nice little trip down memory lane, down Clough Road and all that type of stuff. So good to see it in the flesh.
We were just before you joined.
Rudely interrupted.
We were just talking about the basically the bottom end of the table, and obviously with Warney going at Derby, it looks like John Eustace coming in from Blackburn. And Plymouth's win in the FA Cup over Liverpool, does that reinvigorate their season? And the Derby one is interesting, is it? Because they lost 7 league games in a row, 8 if you include their FA Cup exit. You kind of felt that Derby were going to be the ones that would really struggle to get out of it. But now they've changed the manager. They got obviously a battling point that they celebrated that they won the Champions League at Carrow Road. How do you think those dynamics impact the bottom end of the Championship, and what impact could it have on Hull City, of course?
It could be huge. I think the Eustace one's obviously quite intriguing, seeing how that pans out. But I think there have been whispers about potentially how tough that job actually is once you get through the door. I think at Blackburn, there's a lot of different dynamics, I think, at play that John's had to deal with or is dealing with. So maybe that's why that thought process comes into it. Luton obviously made a change. That hasn't really done much as yet under Matt, even though I've got a lot of time for him. I think he's a very good coach. And Plymouth being able to beat a Liverpool team that looked a bit different, obviously, to the one that's blasting apart the top of the Premier League, but is in no doubt Liverpool Football Club. So that was a huge potential momentum starter for them. And it leaves City where City have been for a huge part of this season in trouble, but with some real signs of Ruben's work taking effect. And I mean, none of this is going to get solved in the next month or so, is it? City, regardless of kind of form, fitness of squad and results, unless they go on a staggering run of winning every single game, that'll fundamentally change it. But I think it feels a little like what we were talking about a couple of months ago, which is strap yourselves in. It's going to be tough. It's going to be a fight. But ultimately, as I said then, and as I believe now, I think there are 3, not trying to damn Hull City with faint praise, but there are 3 worse teams than them come the end of the season, definitely.
I was going to ask that because Chris Dyer, thanks for all your comments, by the way, on social media. Chris Dyer asked, with Argyle and Cardiff's FA Cup exploits, does that, and their resurgence, does that increase City's relegation prospects? And throw into the fact that Derby, they are in trouble for us. But do you think it increases their chances?
I love that there's 2 words, relegation and prospects, together. One inherently horrendous, and the other one a positive word with prospects, isn't it? What are the prospects of that? I mean, the thing that if you're a City fan that you've got to remember is that you're looking at teams that are on their day pulling off wonderful results, but you're also looking at one team that's bottom of the table and one team in Cardiff that's 2 points ahead of City. So they've had less of those days that they've had, that we've seen and that have been celebrated, than they have the poor days, which puts them in this position. Same with City. That 4-game winning streak and those kind of heady days of looking further up, seem a long time ago now as we look out on this dismal Monday morning. But I think if you're a Plymouth Argyle fan or a Cardiff City fan, rub your hands together. Let's get excited. Let's take it back into the league. I think if you're a City fan, if you're Luton, Derby or Pompey, or maybe even Stoke as well, I think you sit and wait to see if there's a reaction. You don't assume that that's going to be the case because, I mean, taking Plymouth as that example and what I've seen of them over the last few weeks, I saw them get absolutely battered by Burnley, and not just kind of like on the ropes, on the floor, my God, getting an absolute football shoe-in, which could have been more. But they then get a battling point in the last minute up at Sunderland, and that's followed up by a win against West Brom with an extremely questionable penalty shout and a second goal, which I think has been factually reported as he was offside. But so in another instance, you're watching them lose to West Brom, coming up against Liverpool. So yes, it's great for them, and I love it because of the FA Cup. But I think if you're a Hull City fan, you're all right to say, all right, let them get carried away because they've had more bad days than they have good.
And it means extra games for them, which is never a bad thing either. Martin on Twitter writes he thinks it's going to go to the wire. Martin, in terms of clauses and all that sort of stuff, let's park that for now. In terms of relegation clauses, because there are 16 games to go. Let's deal with that a bit further down the line. If it is a fair question, but I think let's park it until probably after the international break. Burnsy, how do you see it then? Because there are 16 games to go, 15 now for Derby and Portsmouth. Where are you at in terms of the battle to stay in the division?
I'm looking at it constantly to hit the magic 50 points. Now, whether 50 is going to be enough or whether it's less than 50, but say for argument's sake, to hit the magic 50 points to say safe, what do they need? 21 points from 16 games. If I'm honest, I think it's 21 points from 15 games because I don't see them going to Portsmouth on the last day and winning. Would you want to be in that situation? Hopefully, they'll have solved the situation by then, but you wouldn't want to do it. I don't think they've won a last game of the season in about 8 seasons, since 2015, 2016. Last regular season game against Rotherham, and then they went to the playoffs. So, and they've still got to play 8 of the bottom 10, yeah. So it's going to be dog eat dog in there. And so that's the destiny's in their own hands, but all the teams can say that. So they've got to play 8 of the bottom 10, 5 at home, including the bottom 3. So you win the home games, and you're not far off. But the problem is, you look at that table, and they've won 2 home games. So how do they change that? I mean, what's Ruben Sayers saying about the home form and how they change it? I thought they were excellent for half an hour against Stoke, but Stoke, like QPR then, to my mind, in the way I watched the game, just took the sting out of the game, took the pace out of the game, took the pace out of City, and just started just to keep the ball and knock it around for 10 minutes, take the sting out of the game, and then start building a bit of pressure with possession. And, the crack then started to appear. They get back in the game. So how do you sort the home form out? The squad is better than it was coming into January, but I still think it looks harder to pick a team now because he's got more choice. And hopefully everybody gets up to speed and they gel quickly and everything like that. But looking at what's gone before, it's going to be tough. They're definitely in it. They've just got to find that consistency of performance or consistency of result.
The fascinating thing that I've always found fascinating, because I call it fascinating, is when it is fascinating when it comes to this, and you two would have seen enough football to kind of understand where we're all coming from. Is when we look at teams like this and we talk hypothetically about what they need, any team that's down there, and having been down there myself, Jesus Christ, in various divisions, you end up at the most important part of the season with lots of games under your belt already. So there is sometimes that inherent late season fatigue that comes in from the games. And you're then looking at a squad of players that have done nowhere near what you need them to do, which is go on like a run of form, which if you did that at the start of the season, you'd be talking about a City side at least mid-table, even knocking on the door of the playoffs, wouldn't you? You want form, consistent form and output from players that haven't shown consistent form and output for 6 months. So that's where the real test comes in. I hope that new faces, with the kind of different things that they bring, like a Matt Crooks or a Louis Barry, the different players, but can really gel in the team and hopefully create something very positive for City going forward. But that we've discussed the home form and the vibe at home for months, a couple of seasons now, haven't we? That's and I always fall down on the side of, and not saying this because hopefully we get bundles and bundles of fans listening to this, and you're not just saying it to appease them. I do think the football fans that go to City and pay the good money to go and watch City can kind of sit there and kind of go, come on then, show us what you've got, because that's they've already invested literally in what this team's doing. The team then needs to give them something to shout about, which I think broadly, since Ruben's come in, has been the case, hasn't it? But there's several extra gears that City need to go through to make that home form, that ability to play and perform, and more importantly, win at home, something to really base a survival bid on. As you're saying, Burnsy, those games are there. You can control what those situations are to a point, but then the team's got to step forward and perform.
Yeah, JDB asks on Twitter as well, what are the club doing to try and address the atrocious home form? Have they consulted sports psychologist. Treat match day preppers and away game, 3 pints for fans to get the atmosphere going. This should be the club's top priority. We'll get relegated if home forms don't improve.
I like that. It'd be great if it did like move that around. Start with 3 pints for fans, then sports psychologist.
I think we just all need psychologists. It's been that bad at home for so long that I think it's not just the players. I think the fans need counselling. But joking aside, and there's comments on the pitch again as well about the standard of the playing surface. But what I would say, and City's isn't great before the rugby starts in earnest as well. Watching a lot of games now, a lot of the pitches around the place, even in the Premier League. I noticed when Forest beat Bournemouth last weekend, the pitch at the City ground wasn't great. Admittedly, that's right on the River Trent, but there's a lot of pitches are really struggling. But
it feels just. I mean, on a very boring separate pitch point. It feels this season there's more. Are we seeing more of that, or are our brains getting tricked into seeing more of those pitches? Because for a long time that had completely vanished, unless you went to a little further down the pyramid with the greatest respect. You very rarely see crap pitches nowadays, or ones that are dug up or muddy or anything like that. Do you? They're all pretty pristine now.
I mean, I know it was absolutely tanking it down at Bramall Lane the other Friday night, but the pitch at Bramall Lane started to call. I noticed, I was watching the highlights of Swansea. Obviously, they had a great win. I mean, you just on this, while we're talking
massive
about
for them. Massive for them.
Given the way Luke Williams was as well, and the feeling around that football club, they would sink from that stone. So to win 1-0 at Bristol City on Sunday. But yeah, I was watching some of the Swansea game, their last home game, and the stadium at the Liberty. It was the Liberty Stadium, now the Swansea.com, I think it is. But the pitch there has always been like an absolute carpet, massively helpful in Brendan Rodgers, in Roberto Martinez, getting them playing the football they played to get into the Premier League. That pitch was like a plough field the other day. So City is struggling. They've obviously spent 1.3 million on it over the summer. That for whatever reason, there's been some mistakes made. It's not great. They're trying to solve it. Hopefully that gets better. It will be better, hopefully, by the time we get to play Norwich on Saturday. But yeah, look, they've got it. You can't sugarcoat it, and nobody can. They've won 2 games in 15. The next best, I think, is Plymouth, or was Plymouth with 4. They've now beat West Brom, so now everybody, the teams above them, have won 5. They've got to fix it. And you're right. He's right. If they don't fix the home form, they probably will get relegated, because it puts so much pressure on their away form. I mean, they've got Burnley on Wednesday night, and that strange quirk in me thinks, well, Burnley they've conceded 9 all season. They've had 10 clean sheets in a row. Surely Hull City are going to go there and win, or at least score a goal. But they've proven that as you say, Prutts, in isolation, in isolated games, Leeds at home, Sheffield United away, they can mix it with the best in the league. They drew with Burnley at home earlier in the season. They can get good results, but they can only get them in one-off moments. They can't get them in 3 or 4 games in a row. And if they don't sort the home form out, if they don't win 3 or 4 games at home, there's a very good chance they will get relegated. That you can't, can you, Prutts? You can't with home form like that. And when you've got 5 coming at home, including Plymouth, Luton, and Derby. They've got to look. You know that.
Yeah, the what your mind's kind of drawn back to. I vividly remember we were doing the Leeds were at City in January of, I can't remember what year it was.
4th. Yeah, January the 4th.
No, I mean in seasons gone by when Jared went and who else went in that window? Camille, did he go?
Camille,
he went, and it just felt. Obviously, it was right on. I think it was the day after we did the game. Beautiful Saturday, but you got a sense of Christ. If they weren't about to fall off a cliff, they were very close to the edge. And obviously, as we saw that rest of that season dwindle to what it dwindled to, it feels like there's a different vibe about this City team now. I think in that particular in a similar position, it feels a lot brighter and a lot more positive than it did back then. So when you're looking at the experience of potentially 1 or 2 players, maybe in that, but the feeling of the fan base as a whole, and this is me not trying to tell them how to think at all, but there is an inherent more positive vibe with a coach who has already shown himself in bits and pieces of being very capable of getting this City side to play in a way that can garner results. It goes back to what you're saying, Baz. The teams that are at the top or that are fighting it out for the more prestigious parts of what the division offers, they're not necessarily across the board, man for man, better than what City have got. They've just quite simply been more consistent, haven't they? That's what gets you promoted. City fans know that. They've watched their team get promoted. I'm sure the teams that Phil Brown had and Steve Bruce had, you get that there was more up until they got into the Premier League. That it felt like Brownie's team was a bit more workmanlike than Steve Bruce's. I don't know whether I'd be correct to say that, but it felt a bit more like that. But they got the job done. They had men, blokes, whatever you want to class them as in that team that he could get 6, 7, 8, 9 out of 10 most weeks. Ian Ashby in the centre of the pitch, giving you everything every single week. You know what I mean? He's not. Ashby would be the first to say, you know what I mean? You're not talking about Bobby Charlton, but you're talking about someone who knows how to get promoted, someone who knows how to put runs of games together. Have City got that? Have they got that in the makeup? I think they've got 1 or 2 players that could galvanise and have the team pushing in the right direction. It just needs to happen sooner rather than later. And we talked about the players that have come in and maybe taken a little time to bed in, but sorry, that the bedding in period's got to be very, very quick. You know what I mean? You've got to go, I don't know, straight from first base to fourth pretty quickly to make sure that the performance is there and also the results are there.
It's mad though, isn't it? Because we talk about the lack of ability to put runs together. Away from home, it's a complete. It's so far removed from what we're seeing in terms of results at home. 3 wins away from home in a row: Blackburn, Millwall, and Sheffield United. They've not conceded a goal, and they go to Burnley tomorrow night, potentially capable of making it. Sorry, on Wednesday night, capable of making it 4 wins in a row away from home. But yet at home, and then this is the really annoying thing. They're not playing badly at home. They're not. You think of that, as Burnsy quite rightly said. You said this. For the first half an hour against Stoke, they were brilliant. They went in front. They go 1-0 up. The crowd are singing Ruben's name. The MKM is buzzing. They're playing some lovely football. They should go. Matazo and then Pedro, I think in that order, had good chances to make it certainly 2-0. And then you always felt that they would give away a really bad goal. And I said this on last week's show that you're not coming away from these games going, wow, bloody hell, Stoke scored an absolute worldie against it. You hold your hand up, or QPR did. They play 35 passes and then Elias Chair clubbed it in from 35 yards. All the goals are absolutely awful goals at home. They're conceding. They're so bad, and it's really so frustrating because they're doing so much good now at home. Their structure's better. Their general performance is better. They're creating more chances. Maybe not hitting the target quite as often as they would like, but that is the chances are coming. You'd be more worried if they weren't. But it's that inability to go in front and then get that second goal, or in a game like QPR when it's a 0-0, is get that first goal and then go and win it. Instead, you concede the first goal, 6 minutes later, concede the second goal, and basically the game's over. And it's just so inherently frustrating. And then they take 1 step forward, and it feels like, Burnsy, a step back at home, doesn't it? And that is, until they can fix that, we're going to keep having these same really annoying conversations, almost like we had with Liam last year, that with a far better squad, and particularly man for man, the likes of Greavesy, Jaden Philogene, Fabio Carvalho, Tyler Morton, etc., they were still having. It was still the same problem. They were still going 1-0 up against Birmingham, absolutely dominating them, not getting the second goal, and then Jukovic comes off the bench and does what he did in the FA Cup a few weeks earlier, and they dropped 2 points. It's the same thing as keep happening. It's so frustrating.
Well, hopefully it'll change. He has got better resources. I agree with Prutts, and going back to the Bowen Grzycki season, you thought, oh blimey, that they shouldn't have been in trouble, but they could be in trouble, and they were in trouble. Ruben Sayers has more resources now. The signings, I think, are generally agreed. Everybody thinks, yeah, that's good recruitment. The recruitment's been good. Louis Barry presumably will start because he's not come in from Aston Villa to sit on the bench much longer. He'll start at Burnley. Does John Egan start, allowing Sean McLaughlin to go and play on the left side of defence, which has been a problem all season, really? Does he go there? When's Charlie Hughes back in the mix? When's Casey Palmer back in the mix? I was encouraged by Matazo's sort of full debut because, we've seen players come from abroad and struggle to get in to the hurly-burly of the Championship, but he got in there, scored an early goal, looked the part. So that was encouraging. So there's all these questions going around in my mind as to what he does, because he's got more choice in terms of the team he picks. Well, does he have more choice? He had more choice after the Sheffield United win because they all played well, but has the choice narrowed because they lost at home to Stoke? I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying, Prutts. I'm out of touch doing the podcast and try to fill space with rambling thoughts, really.
We were listening, mate. It's fine.
It sounded great. I don't know what you said, but it sounded good.
I don't know.
No, but I think it mirrors potentially what the general feeling is about it. It's a City team and a squad and a club that this season gets us to this point and just throws up questions, doesn't it? Like, just throws up so many questions, talking about style of football at home, the way that it was played at home. You work it back. Everyone's got to take that bit of responsibility all the way back to management changes. You get Tim Bolter and the way that his kind of vibe felt like it dragged people down, didn't it? There was a seriousness about him which wasn't matched in a seriousness of results. It sounded like he was operating in a permanent state of frustration when it came to the players and when it came to the fans and when it came to results, which is bizarre considering he was the manager. But then Ashton's got to look at the way he's gone about doing that. But as we've always said, it's his football club. He can do what the hell he wants with it. If he thinks that finishing outside the playoffs with that team was worth a managerial change, we can debate it, but he did it. Then you move on. You bring, with hindsight, the wrong person into the job. So then you change that. And you just end up having to... It's heading towards that deadline of what the end of the season is with just a ton of paperwork next to you thinking, Christ, I've got to get through all this to get to there. And I maintain it, notwithstanding using very dodgy analogies or metaphors, but that there's enough. City have got enough in the door to be safe. They've absolutely got enough in the door to be safe. With, you look at what Matt Crooks brought straight away. Hopefully, he's going to be in the type of rhythm of being able to perform week in, week out. John Egan's got unbelievable experience. Chose to get himself out of one situation to go and find himself game time. He's not here just to be a good senior pro. No, get him in the team. Louis Barry, capable of the absolutely spectacular. We've seen that at Stockport. He's got to do that now at City, week in, week out. And that's what the challenge is. And that's when hopefully we have this debate in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. Those questions have started to get answered. However, that one of home form performance is the one that really does have everyone's head scratching.
And that's the thing, isn't it? Because it is a head scratcher, because they go to Sheffield United and put in that quality of performance, score those goals, defend like they did.
No pressure, though. No pressure. We're lauding Plymouth for doing what they did against Liverpool, albeit riding the luck in certain respects. But there's no pressure. No pressure on, even though they're in the same division, Sheffield United are a far better team. They're a far more consistent team. Again, going back to that key word, consistency. Burnley have been more consistent, but they haven't dazzled like they did under Vinny at all. But I'm sure Scott Parker couldn't care less. That when the comparisons come about the way his Burnley side go about it, he'll go, look at the goals we've conceded, look at the games we've played, look at the points we've got, look at where we are in the division. I don't care what you think. I know how to do it. I've got two teams up into the Premier League. I know how to do it. Yeah. Let me get on with my way of doing it. And for City to go there, it'll be attritional. It'll be possibly not a spectacle, but Burnley don't care. And going back to the point that you were making, Baz, about how teams go about it, Burnley do what they do and get points and get results. City don't quite know what to do at home at this moment in time and need to find out how.
Just looking ahead to the Burnley game, is that almost a carbon copy? And then obviously the Sunderland game, so they've got three of the top teams in the division away from home on the spin. Is the Burnley game a bit like the Sheffield United game in that sense then? And based on what you're saying, is absolutely zero pressure because nobody will give them a cat and mouse chance to go into Burnley in getting anything apart from a beating, probably 1-0.
But I disagree with that, because go back to what you said earlier on the pod. You look at City's away form, and it's decent. They've won the last 3 games away 1-0. They've had clean sheets. Their last away game was at a side where only Burnley had won in the league. So and Burnley, for all this clean sheets and everything like that, quite a lot of their games at home are a tight squeeze, aren't they? I think they've had 6-0-0s at home, and I know they've not been beaten and things like that. But given that, they've got a chance. They have to have a chance. I think you have to respect that from a City point of view. I know what you're saying about Burnley, but they must give teams a chance to sneak a result, and somebody's got to do it, haven't they?
No, that's exactly my point. I genuinely believe, call me naive, but I think City have got an absolute chance going to Burnley on Wednesday because of the way they play away from home. My point being, coming to what Prutts was saying about at Sheffield United, there was no pressure on City, and equally there'll be no pressure on City on Wednesday night at Turf Moor, because everybody will expect, even notwithstanding that they've won 3 away from home on the spin, including Bramall Lane, but everybody in football will, home banker, look at where City are on the table, look where Burnley are. Burnley don't concede. It'll be tight, but they'll probably edge it 1-0. But there's no pressure based on what Prutts has just said. They went to Sheffield United, no pressure, turning that performance. Flip that to when they play at home, is all the expectation is on them against Stoke City, against QPR, although QPR were in great form, 12 unbeaten at the time. But given that narrative about their home form, and they will be against Norwich. Norwich are doing well. I know they dropped 2 points against Derby, but they're pushing for the top 6. But people will go expecting, well, it's a home game. City need to win. Away from home, if Prutts is saying, there's not a lot of pressure on them, particularly at Burnley, and again when they go to Sunderland next Saturday.
Maybe a sense of relief in it, possibly with the players, if we're going to get under the skin from a subconscious point of view, that it is on their own. That's no disrespect to City fans at all. Christ Almighty, that, like I said, it's you do your part. You turn up in numbers, so that's the buying, literal buying from the fans. It just strikes me something particularly odd that it's been 2 or 3 managers now that are struggling to address that. Obviously, the way we were discussing it under Liam this time last year was in an inherently more positive manner, because it was about being able to kill teams off to finish in the top 6, wasn't it? Not compete with teams and beat teams to stay up above the bottom 3. So there is obviously a difference in that, and there's a different pressure that comes with that, a different atmosphere, I think, possibly. The players go about it in a timid way, which I think at times they did under Tim, but I get the sense of a little bit more belief in the side now that Ruben's been able to get his hands on the team for a few months now.
Yeah, absolutely.
How big a factor is it going into? Sorry, how big a factor is it going into this week or this game at Burnley on Wednesday that they haven't actually had a game since that Stoke game? Is that a big positive? Well,
hopefully they'll be rested. Hopefully that means that Ruben's got, because as he said, didn't he, when he came in, it was just game after game after game. So being able to kind of get his points across, and it won't be reinventing the wheel by any stretch of the imagination. It'll be reminding of fundamentals, of his fundamentals, and practice. It sounds a very basic thing. Work on set pieces, work on patterns of play, work on being tougher to beat, which, if you are a team that's down at the wrong end of the table, inherently you've been easy to conquer over the course of a season. So hopefully he's had time to work on that. And that's what you see, hopefully what you see in the game in midweek, that work on the training pitch is then getting transferred onto the pitch itself. And it's as much physical as it is, I think, mental and emotional as well for City to be able to deal with this, because it will be a heightened state of pressure between now and the final kick of the ball of this season. Because, like I said, and going back to your point, Burnsy, with what form they need to find themselves in, they're playing all the teams in and around them, which you pointed out. So it's just going to be game after game after game of knowing that, Christ, there's no free hits, is there, at all? There's no free hits in the sense of being able to take points off the teams in and around you. And this is where we'll see the mettle. But the professionalism of the players. I mean, in the sense of being able to deal with that pressure, not in the way that they approach the jobs, but it's kind of championship life on the line. And like I said, I think the character's there. I think the quality's there. But it's easy sat here kind of without having to kind of chuck your boots on and have to go and give it a go yourself. Everyone's got to have to play their part. And I do bounce that back to the fans that go to the MKM. Everyone's got to play their part.
That dovetails. There we are. One of your words. Stephen asking why they didn't go to why they didn't fly out to Turkey. Yeah, why they didn't fly out to Turkey for some warm weather training in this week. Well, I think Ruben was more than happy with them staying at Cottingham. It's also massively expensive for them to go out to Turkey. It wouldn't surprise me if they went out in the March international break. But that said, I think every time they've come back from a warm weather training camp in Turkey, they've lost. So, and that was the case last season as well. They went out in March last year. It was big. Liam bigged it up as a wonderful thing for the end of the season. Great. And look what happened. So, yeah, we'll have to wait and see what happens. But I think Ruben was more than happy with staying around at home. I went to see him last Wednesday. He'd given the players the day off. A couple of injured players were there. If you've not listened to that, by the way, we've put it up as a pod, the entire interview with Ruben Sayers. He talks about Puerta, about that clause in his contract, about Oscar Zambrano, and loads of other things. So go and listen to that. It's Ruben was on great form. But yeah, look, it's in their hands. I always think at this stage of the season, you can only ever ask for it to be in your hands. You want help from elsewhere. I think if you look at the fixtures this midweek, you've got Derby hosting Oxford, Portsmouth hosting Cardiff on Tuesday night, obviously Plymouth against Millwall at home, Luton away at Sunderland. So you want a bit of help from other teams. They got it from Sheffield United. Norwich take 2 points off Derby, but they've got to take care of business. If they ultimately, it sounds harsh, Burnsy, but if they can't win some games at home, they deserve to be relegated. That's the cruel, harsh reality of the Championship. If you don't take care of your own business, others will, and you will get punished. And if they finish bottom three after the final game away at Portsmouth, and I agree with you, Burnsy, I'd even go a week further back and say you don't want anything important riding on the final home game if it is to be Derby. That's notwithstanding when the Plymouth game gets shoved in, because it could be after that. But as it stands now, your final home game's Derby and your final game of the season's away at Portsmouth. You don't want anything on those two games. You want it sewn up before then, because that is dangerous. But they've got enough. They've got 16 games. That's a lot of points to play for. And as you say, eight or nine of the bottom 10 they've got to play. So it's completely in their hands,
I think.
So it's up to them. If they'll either be good enough or they won't, and they've got to start. They've got Burnley on Wednesday night. Who knows what's going to happen there? And then they've got Norwich at home. And Norwich, obviously, we know what Norwich are like. They're a good side. On their day, they can beat anybody. They've got some very, very good players. But it's a home game where Hull City have got to start. They've got, at some point between now and the end of the season, they've got to start picking points up at home. And that is the simple, harsh reality of it. And if they can do it, they've got a chance of staying up. If they can't do it, there's a great chance they'll get relegated, because I'm not convinced their away form can sustain that home form. Before we finish, lots of questions coming in about the best 11 post-transfer window. Burnsy, if you're the gaffer this week, you've got obviously Charlie Hughes and Casey Palmer aren't expected back until the end of the month. We know Liam Miller and Mohamed Baloumi are out until pre-season. Where do you think he goes? Obviously, we know the goalkeeper, but where do you think he goes from kind of back four upwards?
I think Louis Coyle I would expect to be back in at right back. I would expect Egan to come in at left-sided centre-half and McLaughlin to go to left back. I would expect Louis Barry to come in. And who drops out for Louis Barry? Abu Kamara, which is a little harsh. I'd like Kamara. But I think he might go out. And then Matt Crooks, if he's ready to start again after Doms. When I heard you or read your report last week say he'd got DOMs. I had visions of old blokes in flat caps with halves a mile playing DOMs in a pub. I've never heard of DOMs in
Prutts,
an
do you know what
That's
DOMs
why I
are?
didn't. That's why I didn't play, because he had DOMs,
Do you know what DOMs are?
Well,
delayed onset muscle soreness. Yes.
very good. Yeah. Well, there you go.
I
So
genuinely, I was like,
me and Baz had never heard that.
he said it in his
I
press
mean-
conference, and I'm like, what? So I asked it. I was like, at the end, what? I mean, forgive my thickness, but what does that mean, Ruben? And he was like, he started pointing, and abdominals, right? Okay, I'm with you now. I'm with you. Not abdominals, but like soreness.
Sore stomach.
It was his,
Some of the body.
So he was a bit sore, basically, is what he was trying to say. That's why.
Yeah, he's getting old. I mean, I say that as somebody that's 41 this year, and I have that every morning. But I got out.
Look at your age every morning. You're showing off now.
I know, exactly. But so, yeah, you'd think Burnsy that Crooks would start, wouldn't you?
Well,
Well, yeah.
I mean,
if he's fit, so then who goes out midfield? Is it Slater? Is he the one there? But he might be the one with the most energy. I do think he's got some interesting selection decisions to make, and it'll be interesting to see which way he goes. But maybe Crooks for Slater. I don't know. And Louis Barry for Kamara, and I think that's where I'd go.
Prutts. Micah wants to know about Lincoln. We're going to be speaking, depending on when you listen to this, obviously, we're going to be speaking to Ruben and John Egan this afternoon, Monday afternoon, ahead of the game. So in terms of Lincoln, we've not seen him yet. I wouldn't be surprised if he was in the squad, but we'll have to wait and see. Prutts, John Egan, he's obviously a phenomenally experienced player, over 400 games. Half of those have come in the Championship, 70-odd in the Premier League. Started last season as United skipper in the Premier League, did his Achilles, I think, at Fulham, and was out for the rest of the season. Has gone to Burnley this year. Scott Parker said he was absolutely gutted to have let him go.
glowing about him, wasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, he was. Would you thrust him straight back in, given it's as ironically as football happens, his first game at Burnley? Would you throw him straight in?
Yeah. I think obviously you've got to be mindful of a player with a few miles on the clock, but I've seen John play for such a long period of time now, and he's built to play a lot of football matches. You know what I mean? He's robust enough. And he'll want to. You don't have his success, you don't have his number of games at this level and above without A, knowing how to look after yourself, B, being very fit, and also having the absolute drive, desire, and determination to do it. Hence the fact, as you say, he comes away from Burnley with Scott not being able to offer him the game time that he was after, which, again, sometimes geography comes into it as well. If he's backwards and forwards away from the family home and not getting a game, I could see he's probably thinking, what's the point? Let me get somewhere maybe geographically that works where I can get these games under my belt, which he needs, because as much as it's about what he brings to City, let's not forget that these players are very driven individuals, and he'll think, like as I've just said, with miles on the clock, I meant that with the greatest respect of lots of games played. He'll want his career to last and last and last. He'll want to know if his body is up to the rigors of multi-game weeks in the Championship, which he knows pre an injury such as that he would know. Post, you've got to get those games under your belt to make sure that the body's still ticking over to the level that he wants. So I would absolutely. I think, because players such as that, it's not what he can do solely with a football. It's how he operates in the defence. It's how he'll operate around the dressing room and on the training pitch, and the vocal element of what Ruben wants from his side. Because I don't know, part of what I think we saw in the first half of the season was a team that did burn brightly for a brief moment, but seemed inherently timid, didn't it? Those question marks that come off the back of being under Tim Walter saying, he's a bit, almost kind of, he's a bit too hard on the lads. That's we discussed it at length when he got moved on. That's kind of like big boy pants time, isn't it? Sorry, lads, you've had your little wind up about not being particularly nice to you. Now you've got to give yourself a kick up the backside. And I think John Egan fits that mould entirely.
He's an organiser, isn't he, Prutts?
Very much so. Very much so. And that's what this team that is kind of pieced together in the way that City have gone about their recruitment needs organisation. That'll never go out of football. That will never be an outdated concept. Someone who comes in and is gobby enough to be able to say, you stand there, you do that, you do that, you do that, whilst being able to perform himself. I think John is one of those players that does that. I'd say Matt Crooks feels like one of those players as well. Plus, he's physically imposing, which I think sometimes can help a team and its ability to define its own self-image of being a team that was seemingly quite nice under Liam to being timid under Tim, and now hopefully being what works with Ruben, relished under Ruben, something like that. You see,
that's why we pay you the big money.
God, look at Burnsy's not missed this at all. Look at that whopper just waffling on.
Right, we're going to call it a day there. Just before we do, Prutts, let's skip it. I know footballers hate it because it's one game at a time and all that nonsense, but let's just flick ahead. Let's go past Burnley and look ahead to that Norwich game. Norwich, 2 points off the top 6 ahead of this midweek's round of fixtures. They've won 4, drawn 4 away from home, lost 8. Half a decent record at Hull City, won in January, although I still blame Angus Gunn for clearing out Aaron Connolly, but let's not go down that path. That is, I know it's obviously important for City, but does it help that they're playing perhaps a team in around the top 6 rather than, as we said before, QPR and Stoke, where everybody expected more from them at home? The caveat being that QPR were unbeaten in 12, but I think we still expected City to potentially win that game. Talk to me about the Norwich game.
I don't quite know for definite. This feels about the time that Signs might be available again, does it?
Yes, I think it is.
That'll be the dog barking in either agreement or disagreement about both Signs.
I will.
Because the timing for them has been brilliant to get Josh Sargent back. He was a big miss for them, and he's come back and does what he does, score goals for Norwich. So that's something for City to be very, very mindful of. And if Signs is back as well, that's another thing that. Can you hear this dog go?
Yes, he's available. His ban ends, and he's back available to play Preston on Tuesday night.
There you go.
Did you hear me shout at the dog then?
Yeah, he didn't listen to me. Carry on.
Well, there you go. That's another thing. Another thing for. Hang on, give me.
Distracted by the dog, aren't you?
I know how you feel. So we've spent the weekend. We got my missus picked up a 8-week-old puppy on Labrador puppy. Looks like the Andrex dog. At the weekend, and for the last couple of nights, she's trying to train her really hard, and we've had her screaming. The first night she screamed for 6.5 hours through the night. The second night it wasn't far off. Last night she screamed a bit and then kind of stopped a bit, and then by 3 o'clock she was pretty much quiet. So, it's like having a baby again. Oh my God, what are we doing? But anyway, Prutts, is the dog. Have you muzzled the dog and yourself?
Are you still talking about dogs?
Yeah, well, we're just saying we've got an 8-week-old.
Who's that woman that was? I've walked into a podcast. Who's that woman that?
It was Woodhouse. Barbara Wood. I was going to say Barbara Walters, but she was she was like an
American TV anchor, or
TV chef, wasn't she, or a talk show host, something like that.
I don't. I've wandered in.
Sorry, Burnsy. You ran a far tighter ship, mate, back in the day.
Now it's the Barbara Woodhouse Appreciation Society.
It's pathetic, isn't it? You can tell. I mean, I've got as much mastery over that dog as I have over anyone else in my life. Tune
in next week for the Jane McDonald Appreciation Society.
Yeah, exactly. Singing on cruise ships.
Yeah. Before we go, you were talking about Norwich. So we've worked out eventually that Borja Signs will be available for the game on Saturday.
Well, that makes it a lot tougher. I mean,
stick him in the stands.
Up until he didn't cover himself in much glory at all, he was flying, wasn't he? So you've got a player there that can cause a lot of damage. And like I said, Josh Sargent, it'll be a big physical battle, I think. I mean, something, again, going back to what we spoke about with John, potentially coming into the side, part of a defence that's got to handle Josh Sargent, because on his days, he's up there with the best, I think, in the Championship. So it does make it tough. But again, maybe that sense of what City believed that what this game should be, maybe there's a little bit of pressure off in the sense of Norwich are going along pretty well. They've got aspirations of the top 6. City not expected to wholeheartedly turn them over, but hopefully maybe defying the expectations of the broader footballing public.
Yeah, brilliant. Prutts, great to have you. Burnsy, lovely to see your smile again and hear your dulcet tones.
Nice to see you, fellas.
Been a pleasure.
To see you. Thanks for the invite.
Hopefully, we'll have Catherine back once the Sam Kerr trial is done and dusted. And Fletch, you never know with Fletch what's going on in his life with his car and his carburettor. But anyway, thanks both, and thanks to everybody who watches and listens and getting in touch with us at the 1904 Club. We will be back again soon.